Hi everyone, today's video is about 10th chapter Emergence of Kingdoms and Republics. The Ganges valleys from Janapadas to Mahajanapadas. This plain is called Gangetic Valley as the Ganga and Yamuna rivers flow between the Himalayas and the hills of Deccan Plateau. Initially, the people of different tribes settled down to practice agriculture in convenient part of this valley. These tribes were called Jana in Sanskrit and the place where they settled are called Janapada. People began to settle along these rivers in large number about 4,000 years ago. The use of tools made up of stone, copper, bronze and iron led to gradual clearing of forest, settlement and tilled the land to grow paddy and other crops. Such groups of such villages and towns were called mahajanapadas or big janapadas. How do we know about the mahajanapadas? We get to know much about these villages and towns from two kinds of sources, from archaeologists, excavations in different places and from the books composed during that period. Archaeologists have excavated hundreds of sites in the Ganges valleys and have tried to know more about the lives of people of those days. The books during that period were mostly composed by the followers of Vedic traditions, Buddhism and Jain books. Even though they are religious books, they tell us a lot about the towns and villages and about the kings and rules of those times. Some important archaeological sites of the time of Mahajanapadas: Delhi, Atranjikhera, Kausambhi near Allahabad, Patna, Ayodhya, Rajgir, etc. Villages in the times of Mahajanapadas. We learn from the books of those times that agriculture was managed by landowners called Grihapatis or Gahapatis, who usually worked along with their family members on the fields, but they also implied dasas or slaves, those who worked surrendered and made to serve, and workers, brutakas, or who worked on their fields and homes in return for wages. Some healthy grihapatis had more land and slaves to work for them. In most villages, there are craft persons like blacksmiths who made tools necessary for agriculture like ploughs, shears, sickles, axes, arrows, etc. Potters who made pots for cooking and storing grains, carpenters who made carts, fluffs, furniture, etc. Weavers who wove clothes for the villagers. Probably the Grihapatis gave them grains in return for their products. These products were necessary for agriculture, but the Grihapatis may not had the time or skill to make them. Cities of those times, like today, were mainly inhabited by poor workers. Some of them were slaves and servants, while most of them were craft persons who made goods for sale. What did they make? They make beautiful and fine pots which were in great demand in all the great towns. They wove fine cloths which were bought by rich people of other Mahajanapadas also. They made gold and silver jewelry. They made vessels and tools of bronze, copper and iron. They made wooden crafts and furniture. Of all the things made by craft persons, only a few articles like pots, bricks, iron and copper objects have come out in excavation. Kings, army and taxes. Most of the Janapadas were ruled by kings. These kings had an army of their own to ensure that people followed their rules and no other king attacked their kingdom. They lived in capital cities and tried to build strong fortresses of wood, stone, brick and mud. All this required a lot of money. The soldiers and their families had to provide it for. The brickmakers who had lakhs of bricks had to be paid for, and thousands of men and women who worked to construct these public buildings had to. Picture is a form of sculpture panel of Sanchi Stapa which were made about 200 years ago. Therefore, they were bound to follow his orders and the king would ensure that his commands were obeyed by the common people. Many kings wanted to be more powerful and wealthy. They could do this in two ways: by increasing the taxes imposed on the people and by conquering neighboring kingdoms. The kings began to collect regular taxes from the Grihapatis who cultivated the land. The Grihapatis had to divide their herders of cattle and sheep too had to give the animal produce to the king in the form of tax. Traders were also made to pay taxes on the goods they sold. The kings were also constantly waging wars against each other so that they could bring more territories under their rule. These wars were probably fought by paid armies, but they also harmed ordinary people by destroying crops and burning villages or looting them. Often people of the defeated kingdoms were enslaved and sold off to Grihapatis, traders and officials. Magadha, a powerful kingdom, it spreads on both sides of Ganga. Parts of Magadha were forested, elephants were captured from there and trained for fighting in the wars. Wood from the forest was used for building fortresses and places. In the southern parts of Magadha, there were iron ore deposits which could be used for making weapons, etc. All this enabled Magadha to emerge as a very powerful kingdom. Bimbisara, Ajatasattu were early kings who built the power of Magadha. Mahapadma Nanda was another powerful ruler of Magadha. All these kings used their armies to conquer other kingdoms. During the time of Mahapadma Nanda, the king extended from the northwest part of India to Orissa. We should remember that not all the mahajanapadas were ruled by kings as in Magadha. In some areas, the king were more like Gond headman who relied upon the ordinary people and performed rituals and festivals for the welfare of the entire kingdom. Vaji Ghana, the Vaji Mahajanapadas was to the north of Magadha and it had Ghana form of government. Ghana was ruled by a group of rulers instead of a single ruler. Sometimes even thousands of men ruled together and each of them was called a Raja. They performed rituals, met and took decisions on issues of common interest in assemblies through decisions and debate. However, women slaves and wages earners could not participate in these assemblies. Buddha and Mahavira belongs to Ganas and become famous teachers respected in all Mahajanapadas. Even though the kings tried to conquer the Ganas, they remained active for more than 1500 years. Even though the kings tried to conquer the Ganas, this is the end of the lesson. Thank you.